On today's show, we're talking about Kumar Rocker's first spring start. Yeah, he gave up 4 runs. Who cares? I'm going to tell you why he looked absolutely incredible on today's episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers, the first and best daily Rangers podcast. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan, covering this team for 11 seasons, including all 6 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, on today's show, I'm talking about the Vandy boys, Kumar Rocker's first start of the spring, why it doesn't matter that he gave up 4 runs, why he looked so incredible, and Jack Leiter's new pitch that might just keep him as a starter long term. But let's get into the first things first. Yeah, the Rangers lost 15-6 in spring training. Big whoop. Yeah, they had literally 12 different pitchers throw in this game, and they gave up a lot of runs. Yeah, big whoop. Yeah, Kumar Rocker gave up 4 runs in the first inning, but I'll tell you, I don't care about spring training stats. I care about what I actually see from spring training. And what I saw from Kumar Rocker's first outing this spring were a couple things that I really wanted to see. First off, I finally saw him through a cutter. He just threw one of them. There's the pitch that I am most interested in what he can do with this spring. Also wanted to see more of that changeup. Unfortunately, we only saw 1 inning from Rocker. I'm pretty darn sure that was the plan. Only threw 22 pitches, only threw 1 cutter, only threw 1 changeup, and they weren't particularly great. I mean, the cutter was fine, but it got smacked by Bobby Witt Jr. It was a 0-1 cutter to Bobby Witt Jr. at the top of the zone. Not quite in the corner of the zone where I think he was aiming that ball. Got smacked for a line drive single by Bobby Witt Jr. No shame in giving up a hit to one of the best players in baseball. The changeup was a 1-0 changeup in the dirt to center fielder Kyle Isbell, throwing it against a lefty. Check. In the dirt, not exactly where he wanted to throw it. I think he was trying to throw that for a strike to get back to even in the count. It was followed up by a 98-mile-an-hour fastball up and in to Isbell, which he popped up to the shortstop. Now, a lot of the hits that he gave up, a couple of them, those ringing doubles, got into some hitter-friendly counts, got a 4-seam fastball that caught a little bit too much of the plate and got tagged for it, but 0 walks. The velocity looked fantastic, averaging at 97.4 miles an hour with his 4-seam fastball. The sinker averaging 97.3 miles an hour. Both those are up from what he was doing in the big leagues last year, but that was around where he was in AA and AAA. But the thing that really brought me so much joy, I would have loved to have seen more cutters, would have loved to have seen the sinker being used a little bit more than the 4-seamer. 4-seamer he threw 10 times. I really do think he needs to throw that sinker more often than the 4-seamer. It's just a better pitch at this point. But the thing with Rocker, the reason why I loved him over Jack Leiter in that draft initially, and why I value him a little bit more than Leiter, but this new pitch from Leiter, we'll talk about in the second segment, makes me very excited about Jack Leiter. But the thing I love about Rocker is his command. Now, if you're not a baseball nerd, and you might get confused by the difference between control and command. Control is simply throwing strikes. Just being in the strike zone, avoiding walks. Doesn't matter where in the zone. Control is simply, I can throw strikes, I can stay in the strike zone enough. Command is throwing good strikes, quality strikes, living on the edge of the zone, specifically the corners. And Rocker has been a guy who has had really good control and really good command as well. I mean, back at Vanderbilt, the reason why I liked Rocker a little bit better is not only, he's more projectable, he's a bigger dude, but he threw strikes more often. He just did not struggle with walks. His freshman year, he had 1.9 walks per 9 his freshman year. 19 games, just 1 out shy of 100 innings. And then his draft year, his first draft year, I should say, at Vanderbilt, 122 innings, 2.9 walks per 9 with 13 strikeouts per 9. And this guy lives on the edges of the zone. If you're watching on YouTube, boom. Look at there. Oh, there's my face. Still in there. Look at that. Look at how pretty that is. If you can't see, I will tweet this out. Kennedy Landry also tweeted a picture of this. Yeah, we're just going to obscure my face because it's not as pretty as Kumar Rocker lighting up the corners of this zone. When he's missing, he is just barely missing. And you may have watched him in the big leagues last year and thought, oh my gosh, he's got 6 walks in 11 2/3 innings. He's averaging, a walk every other inning. Does this guy really throw that many strikes? Yes. And he throws quality strikes. One of the things that makes the best pitchers the best is usually either they've got incredible stuff or they've got incredible command. Now, when you have both, that's when you get a special pitcher like Jacob deGrom, when you can throw super duper hard or have crazy spin on your stuff. And you can also throw it right exactly where you want, to where if you hit your spots, there's nothing that a big league hitter can do with it. That's when you get the kind of special stuff. That's what Rocker has the ability to do. And he was living on the edges of that zone in this one. I mean, a lot of the hits, they gave up a couple of too many hits with the four-seam fastball right down the middle of the plate, or that caught a little bit too much of the plate. Vinny Pasquantino crushed that ball. Good double, good hit by Vinny Pasquantino. An absolute, one of the most delightful players on Twitter. I think it's between him and Brent Rooker, for me, who is my favorite baseball player on Twitter. It's not a high bar. There's not that many that are that good. But Rocker, I really would love to see him use that sinker a little bit more often. I would really love to see him, use that curveball. So you look at his pitch mix, and there's a lot of debate with Rocker's rock ball, his best breaking ball, which StatCast labels as a slider. He calls a hard curveball. I call it a hard curveball. I think I'm just going to start calling it a rock ball and just stick with that. He didn't throw that at all in this game. He did have a hit by pitch with the curveball, which is a slower version of his curveball. His actual curveball, which he calls a curveball, he grips it like a curveball, throws it like a slider, and it just is magnificent. It's fantastic. But he can manipulate it a little bit more to have it more of a curvy shape, to make it a little bit slower. It's in the mid-80s when it's the rock ball version, but this one was in the upper 70s, averaging 78.6 miles an hour. He threw it 6 times. He hit it better with it the first time that he threw it, but he was able to land it in the zone. He was able to get it for some swings and misses, including the one strikeout he had in this game where he dotted up a couple of sinkers to a left-handed hitter, and then that curveball just dove right out of the zone. It was magnificent. This is the Kumar Rocker that the Rangers drafted 3rd overall. This is better. Honestly, better than that version of Rocker. This is the Rocker that, people were salivating over after his freshman year when he had that fantastic season at Vanderbilt, led them to a championship, threw a no-hitter in the postseason for Vanderbilt, 19 strikeout no-hitter. This guy, when he's on his A game, he is fantastic, and he is, right there. It's literally just about a question of health and durability. And Kennedy Landry and her story she was writing, which I don't mean to disparage Kennedy. She has an accurate finger to the pulse of what's going on in the team. She is there, and this is more of an indication of how the team is actually feeling. But in her story, she wrote that Rocker has a slim but not impossible chance to break camp with the big league club. I think that's how the Rangers feel. I know that's how the Rangers feel because Kennedy's a great reporter, and she knows what's going on. But for me, watching him, I'm thinking, how do you leave this guy out of the rotation? The only answer to that is he's not ready to throw every 5th day. The Rangers are going to be very, very careful with him and how they throw him. I wish they would just tell us what the plan is with Rocker. I don't think there's some big competitive advantage of letting your fans know, hey, this is kind of what we're thinking with Rocker, or just saying this is generally the plan of what's going on. It's one of the things that frustrates me the most about Major League Baseball, and I wish that the one thing that teams would collude on is health. I think especially with the pitcher epidemic, I literally just finished reading The Arm by Jeff Passan, and how all these different teams will closely safeguard those secrets of how do we actually keep these guys healthy? How are we going to, bring these guys back in their rehab plans, from Tommy John surgery. And same with Jacob deGrom. I'll talk more about that in the 3rd segment of what the plan is for him, if we even know it. I mean, all these things are being safeguarded like the nuclear codes. And if everyone would just share a little bit more of what we know, hopefully we could keep more guys healthier. Hopefully we could get guys back healthier, and it would be a competitive advantage for everyone and just a general good for the sport, because all these pitchers and their arms blowing out. If we could just share every bit of information we've got, that would be very, very helpful, and also helpful to me so I could kind of, mediate, regulate those expectations for what Kumar Rocker is, because right now, need to see a little bit more of that cutter, need to see a little bit more of that changeup, hopefully see him use that sinker a little bit more. But if he starts doing those things, if he starts trusting those, third, fourth, fifth offerings, if he has, is able to utilize this slower version of the curveball more often. I mean, the slow version of the curveball looked really incredible too. I mean, the rock ball, fantastic. The four-seam fastball, velocity's good, extension's good. The movement profile on it isn't quite as pretty. The sinker, he's throwing it just as hard as a four-seamer. It's moving more. He's also commanding it just as well, and it's getting better strikes. I would like to see him use that more often, but it's not like the Rangers rotation is the 2011 Phillies rotation. It's not like they got, Cliff Lee and Cole Hamels and Roy Halladay and Roy Oswalt and, I forget exactly who their fifth starter was, but somebody who was at least a fine mid-rotation guy. It's not like they got four aces in there. I mean, they got two. They got DeGrom and Eovaldi, but it's not like they're the paragon of health. They've got, two solid veterans in there in Tyler Mahle and John Gray, but it's not like they're the paragon of health either. I think Cody Bradford, I would trust to have a better season than either of those two veterans because I love Cody Bradford. I don't think he has done anything to not have a rotation spot with how good he was last year. But there is a possibility for him being a swingman. There is a possibility for moving John Gray to the back end of the pen because John Gray has not been able to stay healthy despite his goal for 200 innings, 200 strikeouts. It's a lofty goal. I commend him for saying that out loud, being like, this is what I'm trying to do. Respect that, and respect World Series champion John Gray. But Kumar Rocker is incredibly talented, and I think that he should be a part of this opening day roster, especially if he keeps pitching on the corners just like this. But just like Kumar Rocker, and I wish he would throw his sinker more often, Jack Leiter has a new pitch, a sinker. Maybe he learned something from watching his teammate Kumar Rocker, but I'm talking about why that's such an important pitch and why I probably should have talked a little bit about it more after his first start. All that and more right after this. This show is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios are one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller for longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need to grab a quick protein boost, they're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for the satisfying crunch, the in-show options are a classic favorite. Whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works as hard as you do. So get snackin' and get crackin' with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Shout out to the Everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On tomorrow's show, I'll be back and talk about Nathan Eovaldi's second start of the spring, and also talking a little bit about who should be the Rangers' opening day starting pitcher. Spoiler alert, it's a decision between two guys, and I don't think it's the Vandy boys. But speaking of those Vandy boys, actually, before we get into that Jack Leiter, almost had a fantastic transition. Alas, no, I did want to get to this one up before I forget it, because my ADHD brain will go through the different segment plans, and I forgot to mention it in segment 1, but Wyatt Langford, the man who was injured with an oblique injury. It seemed like, oh boy, things were going too well, especially the first week of camp when the Rangers had basically no injury news, just somebody at the very, very end of the roster having a little bit of an ankle issue and a little bit of nerve irritation from Robert Garcia in his left pitching arm, but everything was fine with that. Then, unfortunately, the Rangers got news about one of their top prospects, Alejandro Rosario, probably undergoing Tommy John surgery, and they also found out Wyatt Langford dealing with an oblique issue. It was supposed to be just a very, very mild oblique strain, grade 1, which, again, the average return time for that was around 27 days for hitters, and that happened, 35-ish days before opening day. So Langford, they were hoping to just keep him out 5 to 7 days of baseball activities and then resume some play. I believe he played in one spring game. Maybe that just just that first spring game, or it might have happened, I think, actually the day before spring training games started. Anyway, all that to say, Wyatt Langford has resumed some, quote, light baseball activities, and according to his words, is, quote, feeling great. Now, those light baseball activities included running the bases and throwing some baseballs. No swings just yet, but those obliques, the side muscles in there, sidelined a great Joey Gallo season, so I will always have a little bit of fury for those oblique injuries, but thankfully he's feeling good. We'll see when he gets into some games. Hopefully he will get, at least, a week or two of spring training games. I'm not sure exactly when he will be allowed to swing again, even at like a little bit of force, but you really got to make sure that those oblique injuries heal up, because those things can linger, and if they get bad, then you can miss multiple months of the season. Definitely don't want that to happen. Shouldn't have any problem with him being ready for opening day, or at least playing at opening day, but you also would like to get him some reps in the spring, so he's not just ready to play it healthy at opening day, but actually, has enough at bats and plate appearances to get himself fully ready for the season. But talking about the other Vandy boy, Jack Leiter, the first Vandy boy to become a member of the Texas Rangers. Jack Leiter, I was looking at his stats for that first spring game against the Giants on Saturday. Threw a couple of innings, had a walk, had a hit, had a strikeout. And I thought, okay, fastball velocity was up. That was great. Topped out at 99.9 miles an hour. I think that might be the hardest pitch that Leiter's thrown. He might have had a topping 100 in that game that he came back after sitting out on the development list for a couple of weeks in Round Rock, when he was just had, 10 strikeouts or something in like 3 1/3 innings. And it was like, oh boy, Jack Leiter is back. And then had a couple more starts where he looked fantastic in AAA, and then got called back up towards I can't even remember exactly where it was in the season. I think that was like late July, but before his second round of the come up. And, I was looking at his pitch chart, like, okay, the slider was up, 2.4 miles an hour from where it was, the season before. The changeup was up a little bit, maybe a little bit harder than you need to be throwing a changeup. Last year it averaged 89.5 miles an hour. It was 92.4 miles an hour. You'd like a little bit more separation between the fastball and the changeup. That's kind of the whole point of the changeup. Curveball was up 1.5 miles an hour, in the, 82.9 mile-ish per hour range for that curveball. Through 3 of them looked pretty good. All of them were to lefties. But the one pitch I glossed over, because it wasn't very much up in velocity from where he had thrown it the year before, he threw 7 sinkers, 21% of his pitches, 4 of them to righties, 3 of them to lefties. That averaged 97.6 miles an hour. And it was like, okay, that was up 0.4 miles an hour from last year. And I said, hold up a second. A sinker, Jack Leiter throwing a sinker. How is that up 0.4 miles an hour from what he did last year? Because Jack Leiter never threw a sinker last year. In fact, to my knowledge, Jack Leiter has never thrown a sinker in professional baseball. I was there for his first start in Frisco. I watched a lot of Frisco Jack Leiter games, and I never saw a sinker. And I definitely never saw one that averaged 97. That was not something I saw from Jack Leiter. But, talking about the difference between control and command, Jack Leiter's got control. He does not really have command. The similarities between him and Rocker is that they both have one absolutely special, out-of-this-world, fantastic pitch. And the other ones behind that could be really good, but they need to trust him a little bit more. For Rocker, it's his rock ball. And he needs to trust that sinker a little bit more. He needs to trust the changeup a little bit more. Having that slower variation of the curve, I think, will be helpful. Would like to see that cutter just a little bit more than just one pitch. And, it got hit by Bobby Witt Jr., so I can't throw that pitch anymore. No, every pitch gets hit by Bobby Witt Jr. Don't shell it because of that. But Leiter has the fastball, the 4-seam fastball, that all the properties on it are very, very good. Not just that he throws it really hard. Last year he averaged 96.5 miles an hour as a starter. Actually, just for the full season, he averaged 96.5 miles an hour on that 4-seam fastball. That's about where he was. And the spin rate on it, the way it looks to hitters, it's not just the velocity that's very good. It's everything about that fastball that's really darn good. It's just the other stuff. He needs to start throwing those for strikes more frequently. Because when he does it, he can be really darn good. And when he doesn't, you think, okay, well, I guess we're going to throw this man in the pen. He's going to throw 102 miles an hour and occasionally break off those sliders and curveballs. And maybe he gets a little bit better with that cutter. I mean, that cutter I think could be a helpful pitch for him. But the sinker, the movement profile and the velocity, it's similar to Garrett Crochet's sinker, which is not a pitch that Crochet throws a whole lot. I think he'll be throwing it a little bit more. But just the velocity range and how much it moves, it's similar in that. Now, Jack Leiter does not throw that sinker 97 miles an hour with his left hand. He throws it with his right hand. So not quite the same thing as Crochet, but just having a similar movement profile to that and having another look to get off that four-seamer. So guys can't just sit on the four-seamer. That's the whole thing. The fastball, you look at the run value on it, and it was bad. It was negative 18. It was, bottom 5 percentile of pitch value in Major League Baseball last year, which doesn't make sense because the pitch is good. It's a good pitch. It's not like it's some, 91 mile an hour flat four-seamer that's just running right in the middle of the zone. I mean, he's using it in the right places, but it's the other stuff that other guys can eliminate. Like, okay, well, he can't throw those other pitches for strikes, so if it's in the zone, it's a fastball, and I can sit on it, and I can crush it. No matter how good the pitch, they can sit on it, and they can crush it. But you start adding that sinker variation, and it's not exactly where the guys are expecting it to be. It's like, okay, well, if you can only throw the four-seam fastball and the sinker for strikes, then you got hitters guessing. You got hitters off balance. You got hitters not just sitting on that four-seamer, so the four-seamer plays even better, and you have another pitch that's also really good. I think seeing Rocker throwing those multiple different variations, I think that might have clicked something in Leiter's mind, or he just independently thought, hey, I need something to get these guys off my four-seamer. I'm not really having success throwing that slider at the bottom of the zone for some called strikes. I'm not having success with, my changeup or cutter or curveball, throwing them in the zone for strikes to get hitters to respect that, to get them off of the four-seamer so I can go and attack them with all those different types of pitches. That's why I think this sinker is going to be so good for Leiter, is it gives him just that one extra look. Maybe he can just scrap the cutter. He didn't throw it all that much anyway last year. Maybe he can use that changeup just a little bit more. And if he can, really, again, with Leiter, it always comes down to, can he throw that curveball, the slider, the changeup, the non-fastballs for strikes? If he can, he's going to be really freaking good. If he can't, it's still going to be pretty good. But I think that sinker is just a great addition to his arsenal. He has looked really, really good in spring training so far, and I'm not going to do the whole, Jack Leiter versus Kumar Rocker, which one's going to make the roster? They're different pitchers. They're different guys. I don't like comparing them. I know they're both first-round picks. I know they're both top 3 picks. I know they're both from Vanderbilt. I know they were teammates there. They're different pitchers. And the thing is, you don't have to pick one. The Rangers don't have to pick one. They're both here. They're both teammates. They're both probably going to be pretty good. They're already pretty good. They're probably eventually, I'm hoping, going to be really freaking good. And I think that sinker, I probably should have talked a little bit more about it on yesterday's show, but just going back and looking at it and thinking about what I know about Jack Leiter, the many, many things that I have thought and spoken out loud on this here podcast about Jack Leiter, that sinker gets me all jacked up in a way that not many things that happen in spring training get me really jacked up. That and Kumar Rocker's command, oh boy, these two Vandy boys are hopefully this year going to be making a big impact on this Texas Rangers roster. But speaking of guys who are going to eventually make a big impact on this Texas Rangers roster, speaking of prospects, Sebastian Walcott getting his first hit of the spring, and talk about why that's important for me, what Jacob deGrom's plan is in terms of his starting, and a couple more notes from this very weird Monday, Tuesday, whatever, 5th, 6th, you know what I'm talking about. Shout out to the everydayers making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On Thursday's show, I'll be back and hopefully having just as good of transitions where my brain just completely breaks mid-sentence. Maybe I'll even talk about some baseball that happened. But speaking of the baseball that happened yesterday, as I'm recording this, the 15-6 rout by the Royals, where the Rangers had 18,000 different pitchers pitch approximately, but Some of them were even very important, including a couple of my top 30 prospects in Skylar Hales, in Emiliano Teodo, in Winston Santos. They all pitched, and they looked varying degrees of pretty good. Got a couple of outs from Winston Santos. Did not get a single swing and a miss in 13 pitches. Didn't particularly love that, but threw 7 different fastballs. That was all averaging around where we expect for Winston Santos, in the mid-90s, averaging 96.4 miles an hour, ranging all the way up to 97.1. Slider he threw 4 times. That was in the mid-80s, as we expect. Changeup he threw once. Cutter he threw once. I haven't seen him throw a cutter at all in Double-A just yet, but good to see him get some big leaguers out, get some big league action. Him coming in the middle of an inning was a little surprising, but I think the Rangers' plan just kind of went a little bit sideways with Daniel Robert, not being very effective at all. Him getting lit up, and also getting more guys, if you're playing along with the bingo card, Bryce Bonin, a Bryce with a Y on the Rangers, my mortal enemy. Not that Bryce Y spelling. Got in there for a couple outs. He was one of those just-in-case guys. I mean, Hoyer coming in there and thought might get more than an inning out of him, or at least an inning. He got an out and got lit up, and then Santos got in and looked all right. And Dane Acker came in and did give up a run, did give up a couple hits and a walk, but struck out 3 and looked pretty good. I don't know if Dane Acker is going to make this Rangers. I know he's not going to make the Rangers opening day roster, but eventually it could be a guy who slots into the pen. The Rangers have officially settled on him being a reliever as opposed to a starter. I think that was always eventually going to be the case, but good to see him get out there and get a trio of strikeouts. Also, Skylar Hales, a guy who was in my top 30, just barely cracking into there, going out there and throwing some primo gas, as Skylar Hales does do quite often. Another guy who threw a new pitch that I hadn't seen before. I didn't know that he had a curveball. I had not seen Skylar Hales throw a curveball, and that was one of his 3 whiffs. His only strikeout was a curveball in the dirt. Looked pretty darn good. Threw 10 fastballs. That was averaging around the mid-90s, where we would expect for him, averaging 96.2 miles an hour. He can run it all the way up there and hit 100, but usually about 96-ish is what he's averaging, and he's another one of those guys who has all the properties you want in a fastball. He has got a very, very deceptive delivery. He has got a lot of spin on that four-seamer, or just the right amount. He's also got a slider that needs to be a little bit better than it has been in the past. He is going to be I guess now 3-pitch pitcher. Having that curveball, I think, is exciting for him. Just having another look there. He was able to throw it for some whiffs. Threw it 4 times, 3 swings, 1 swing and miss. Pretty solid. Emiliano Teodo also got into this game, only threw 2 different types of pitches. Didn't see him throw that changeup at all. Just some sinkers and some sliders, which he calls a slurve. His breaking ball, which can get all the way up to 90 miles an hour, can get all the way down into the lower 80s. He's got a bunch of different variations of it, but I guess StatCast picks it up as a slider. Fastball was averaging around what we've seen it average at 98.8 miles an hour, running it all the way up there to 99. That's what he do. He threw a baseball hard. He threw a baseball good. Pretty solid outing for him, for sure. And the last little bit of things that made any kind of note for me in this game is a couple of doubles from the Rangers' top prospect. That's right, the teenager, the 18-year-old for another not even month, the man, the myth, the Bam Bam, Sebastian Walcott. A couple of doubles, including a run scored. One of those doubles just turning a bloop single into a double because he was paying attention. Love seeing that from a top prospect, seeing a guy who's got that skill of his speed, and saw nobody was covering second base, so okay, I guess I'll turn this bloop single into a double, seeing him hustle that out, and not only just hitting it like that, but that being the 10th pitch of the at-bat, working some counts, going deep into a count. I believe it was a full count, it might have been a 2-ball, 2-strike count, but working that bloop double off of a AAA pitcher as an 18-year-old, gosh, I just freaking love Sebastian Walcott. Then he dumped the ball into left field, turned that into a double as well. Not particularly hard hit, but just good seeing him get some hits off of. I wish he was in there against some big leaguers. That would have been fun to see, but alas, that was not the case. But Sebastian Walcott, we'll see him for, I don't know, probably a couple more weeks at big league camp. I don't know if he'll end up staying on the big league camp roster for the entirety of this spring, but good to see that. Good to see Evan Carter hit the absolute crap out of a baseball to deep center field. Good to see Alan Trejo get in there and get a hit this spring. And also, we got a little bit more information on Jacob deGrom. He has thrown now 3 times, as we have confirmed this spring. February 11th, which was a day before pitchers and catchers reported. Then he threw on the 16th at bullpen. Then he threw on the 19th. I don't think he has thrown since then, but he is going to throw a bullpen sometime this weekend ahead of his Cactus League debut. Don't worry, he's not hurt. This is the plan. Bruce Bochy, on February 19th, he was on MLB Network, and he said on that day that, he probably wouldn't pitch until around March 1st. So this has been the plan. He is healthy. He is fine. He will eventually get into some Cactus League games, maybe just a couple. This is also not out of the ordinary for any pitcher. This is just kind of how they are planning on ramping him up a little bit slowly. We got those 3 bullpens. This is the normal expected amount of rest that we are getting from Jacob deGrom, so no need to go into full panic mode. There is no need for that. Granted, I would love to see him pitch in a game. I would love to see video of him on a mound making opposing hitters look silly, but I'd rather see him do that in a game that matters in the regular season and hopefully in the postseason this year. But that is your Jacob deGrom update, and that is your podcast for today. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing and bearing with me through my brain farts and attempts to tease going into break and coming out of break. Life of a podcaster, it's real hard, but it makes it a lot easier when I have listeners like y'all. So thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.